mistakes can be good. They can actually be better than what you intended. I had that advice from Andrei Sekula, actually, who, when I was at film school in my first year and he was just finishing. And I thought I'd screwed up a night shoot. And the lab printer lights had come through, and normally you want them in the mid-30s, and they were down in 19, 20. Yeah. And I was going, Jesus Christ. And I was kind of panicking, and Andre said, have you seen it yet? And I said, no. He said, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the numbers. It'll be fine. And if it's not, make up a reason for it to be fine.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and it was fine. It was great. It was actually fine.
This is not necessarily a mistake, but it's a temporary failing, shall we say. I had this set in a film called Entrapment, and the art department had built a replica of a Blenheim Palace room, but they hadn't put any ceiling on it. You look for those real sources of light, at least I do, look for real sources of light in order to create a mood and a feeling. And this scene was meant to be first thing in the morning, it's meant to be in the dark. And I went into the set and looked up to see if there's any skylights, and there was absolutely nothing, just scaffolding and a fan. And I thought, what do I do about this? And for 24 hours almost, I couldn't think how to do this particular scene. And I came in the next morning, everybody's there, and the first AD said, how long, Phil? And I said, I don't know, about an hour and a half. Just out of the top of my head, I had no idea what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. And he said, that's good, because Kathleen Zeta-Jones has got a big hair thing, so that's going to work out fine. I said, good. But what am I going to do now? And so I'm looking at this thing. I just wanted a brainwave, You can always light something, but can you light it in the spirit of the movie and in the spirit of the mood? And I wanted an early morning feeling to it, like the early morning sun or moonlight or whatever. And then the gaffer came to me and he said, all these, it was Chinese warrior suits, all in glass cabinets. And he said, we've wired all these cabinets up. He said, with little things, he said, do you want to see them? And I said, yeah, all right. Thinking like that. And he turned through the switch, and that was it. I thought, all I need is that. And there was a doorway in the set, and I brought a big lamp through the doorway as if it was the corridor, and the lights were on there. But the lights were off in this big room, except for all these things. And that solved that issue. But up until then, I couldn't think of a way out.
It was my first feature film that I ever did. We shot in a studio and we built a prison. We decided to smoke the entire set out and shoot the entire picture with smoke on the set. We were doing wides and on 25s, and then we were sticking 75s on, and then 100s. And even though my style of photography has completely changed and developed over the years, but I really, something that I just could not get through in the grade was shooting through that much atmospheric. You just can't match the contrast, and you physically have to take a wider lens and move it through a space if you use that much atmospheric, if you want consistency. And building on what Gavin was saying, as far as smoke, it's all about control, because the thing with an edit is that it's just there and it's not there, and you do need complete consistency in order for it to really work.
Yeah. I remember shooting another film school graduation film. I had a terrible night. Everything went wrong. I didn't order the right lights. I didn't have them high enough up. I couldn't, because we didn't have that much money. I didn't have a cherry picker. We had a very expensive local Steadicam guy who was great coming out to do a shot. This is 1990. It was costing quite a lot of money because it was period, so we dressed the street, and it was awful. He couldn't see what he was doing. There were flares down the lens. The lights were in shot. I was trying to hide them, and I was like, oh God. And then I went into the truck to eat my food on my lap, and it fell onto my feet, and it's like, this can't get anywhere. So when we did the shot, and I thought, shit. This is all on film. Then about a week later, we did another part of that scene, and I learnt from the first thing, and I thought, okay, I'll beg, borrow, and steal the right lights. So I had a 4K on a cherry picker, and I lit it, and I thought, that's perfect. That's how it should be. Great, I've learnt. When it all came out, no one talked about the good bit that I thought I'd done right. But everyone said, how do you do all those flares on a great move down the street? It was so atmospheric, were you shining lights and then that was brilliant. And so they loved the mistake. They loved the thing I thought I'd completely screwed up. And the bit I thought I'd got right, not noticed.
Even as an experienced cinematographer, if you can stay 5% outside your comfort zone, just be.
But I think it's a good thing about
on that edge.
making mistakes, because not as though you intentionally want to make a mistake, it's because you don't want to do it conventionally.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of my life making mistakes, and it took me a while to learn that the most important thing about making a mistake is learning to hide it very, very well. Because a lot of the time, if you don't, I mean, I could be quite vocal on set, but if I've made a mistake, trust me, I'm very, very quiet, because people can't read your mind. It's one thing they can't. You're sitting there looking, okay, that's a big problem. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. And you just work it through, and you just work out how to hide them, because you're always going to make mistakes. Something changes, and then you didn't really think that it was going to change, because that's how you planned it, but you didn't really come up with a plan B. So then you're going, this is a mistake, this is a mistake, and if you can hide it, well, I think you're going to do okay.
You also learn how to make it work, so you can come across and think, oh, shit, that's not worked at all. But you then also have to think very calmly, how can I make this work on the set now?
Yeah.
What can we do? And sometimes that does mean discussing options with the director. But also I like the room for something unexpected to happen on set, and to engage with that and throw away the plan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because that's exciting, and sometimes that's when it's good.
Yeah.
You know, when you didn't, you can't. You know, we've just been looking at some interesting previews, which is great, and planning is great, but you can't plan for everything that will happen on the day, especially not with weather or what an actor will bring to a scene or whatever. And
but that's what you want a really good director to do, is to take the idea that you had, or the idea that you both had in pre-production, and take that idea and make it better. Some directors will add elements into your setup, and it will just make it and turn it into a nightmare. And you look at it and go, that's really clever. Actually, you know what, you've made it much better. I would never have thought of that, and it's made the whole thing better. But sometimes it isn't, it goes the other way. But I think you always have to have a plan B. And I tell you, the people that love plan Bs, producers, if you mention and go, this is going to be really tricky to produce this, and as long as they understand that you may have problems, but you go, look, I've got a plan B, suddenly they're really on your side, because they know you've thought all the way through the process, and they know that you're going to have a difficulty with this setup. And it could come from anywhere. But I do find that producers suddenly become super helpful when they know that you've thought of a plan B. And that first plan's based on your experience and the preparation you're doing, even if you've not done it before. I mean, I'm just about to do a day with a 3D wire rig. I've never used a 3D wire rig, but I've seen them on football. I just know it's better to go into that situation and go to people, you know, I've not used this before, I need some help. And I think then people become helpful.
I think you always learn the most, don't you, when you've had a bad day, because, you know, when you're on the way back, you're thinking like, why did that go wrong, or who did I need to speak to? Like, why had that occurred, or where that miscommunication happened? And so I think that the days that don't go as well are huge gifts, because you sort of take that and you learn from it. Whereas when you have a really good day and maybe something happens very well by chance as well as you're planning, you know, you don't give it a second thought. And so I think that it's always the mistakes that are our greatest teachers. I had a really good one actually really soon after film school, where I was working with a first-time director, and it was a short film. Everyone was working on it for nothing, just had got stuff from the NFTS because I just graduated, and I thought I was being very helpful to her in terms of helping her, you know, sort of, because she was less experienced. And afterwards, you know, she had a completely different perception of the experience that I had been trying to take over and sort of do this film.
Oh, really?
In my mind, I was like, wow, that's so interesting, because I didn't think that wasn't how I wanted to come across, but it was the best lesson to have got straight after film school, because I thought, well, I need to be careful about how I present ideas, and how what I think is a contribution isn't received by someone else as their idea being kind of trodden over. So, because filmmaking is so much about people, that is, you know, like how you collaborate with everyone in your team, that aside from all the technical stuff we have to do as DPs, it's about how we communicate as humans, and that's the thing that is always, you know, you can always improve upon how we are as people, I think, on set, especially when we're under pressure. And
did it change your approach?
Yeah, completely.
Just for the few jobs afterwards, because obviously then you work with different directors.
I think it's sort of permanently that I'm always mindful when I'm suggesting ideas that I'm doing so in a way that isn't saying I think you should do it this way, you know.
Sure.
So and I don't think I necessarily was doing that at the time, but it was good. You know, we never see ourselves, so when you get that kind of feedback, it's really helpful to learn from it.
I understand what you're saying. It's a really tricky position. It's how far do you go, because you never want to undermine the director, because the whole process is going to break down.
Yeah.
But by the same token, sometimes working with the director, they do need to understand, as if they go, we have to be here, and I go, well, if you're here, we can shoot now. This is going to cause a little bit of a problem. Do you want to shoot now, or do you want this? They're both, to me, they're both the same thing. They're absolutely the same thing. So is that, in relation to what you're saying, is that me undermining the director by
No, I think you're
pointing
giving,
out
I think you're
that
giving them the wisdom of your experience, saying
Yeah.
we've got these two options,
Yeah.
you know, like, and then they can
Yeah.
make their choice about.
I think it's how you present
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I think you're still
It is.
presenting an option for them
Yes.
to decide on.
Yeah.
I think in terms of mistakes, I found they're never as serious as you think they are. Also, I don't call them mistakes.
Yeah.
I call them creative interventions or differently right. I'm sure we've all gone home thinking, why did I do that? I mean, I've lain in bed at night going, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Why didn't I move that light? Why? And then you just fret about it, and then you see it in the edit and go, it's all right, actually.
I say this. I had a couple of things last week on a shoot, and exactly the same thing happened. And I've gone through this. It happens all the time. You just go, why did I do that? And why didn't I do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why didn't I do that? And I'm thinking, okay, nobody's going to notice. And then you think, you know what? Nobody really is going to notice. Nobody notices. They won't.
Because we're so hyper on
Why
what we're
didn't I
doing.
do that?
You know.
You know.